The case of the boy in the box is truly haunting. On February 25th, 1957, authorities received a call of a mysterious box in the woods outside of Philadelphia. They were horrified to find the remains of a young boy who seemed to be about 4 to 6 years old. He was malnourished and covered in bruises, and his cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head. Not only is his case a mystery to this day, his identity has still never been found.
This is considered one of the most shocking cases in Polish history. On January 6, 1999, a sailor in Poland noticed something strange floating on the river. It was long and pale and it smelled very bad. And as he leaned in closer to get a better look, he saw an ear attached to it. Now, what I'm about to say next is very disturbing, so be warned. After the sailor found this substance, DNA testing then indicated it was the skin of a missing woman named Katarzyna Zawada. And whoever did this to her turned her skin into a suit and was likely wearing it. So at this point, only her skin was found. Until January 14th, when pieces of her clothing and one leg was found also in the river. 17 years later, 52-year-old Robert J. was arrested for this. He previously worked in a dissection lab, meaning he was skilled in preparing animal skin. And he allegedly also knew the victim. As of October 2022, 23 years since the victim was found, Robert J. is still awaiting trial. As he remains in custody, investigators are allegedly gathering more evidence to solve the case. Follow for more.
This is Charles Manson. He was the leader of the infamous commune/cult known as the Manson family. After spending his youth in and out of reform schools, Manson's first prison sentence came in 1956. He spent the next 11 years in and out of prison. In 1967 he was released from prison again and made his way to San Francisco. He became a sort of spiritual guru, with him and his followers, typically young women, being known as the Manson family. They created a home at Spahn Ranch in 1968. In July 1969, Gary Hinman was killed by the family. In August 1969, Sharon Tate, girlfriend of director Roman Polanski, was killed by the family. She was 8 months pregnant. The family also killed Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, Wojtek Frykowski, Stephen Parent, Leno and Rosemary LaBianca, and Donald Shea. The murders were allegedly on the back of Manson's orders. There's so much more to this story and its background, so let me know if you'd like a part 2.
One bone-chilling night in 1973, the two young McDaniel children claimed to see a creature lurking around their house. This isn't my typical true crime case, however, this story is too freaky not to talk about. The father actually didn't believe his children until one night when he heard something scratching at the side of their house. When shining the flashlight, it showed a human-like creature. Mr. McDaniel actually claimed it had 3 legs on it, a short body, 2 little short arms, and 2 pink eyes as big as flashlights. His story freaked the town out so much that police actually threatened that if he didn't stop talking about this creature, they would arrest him. By the time all of this was over, 5 men actually had been arrested because they fired shots into the air when they thought that they saw the creature.
I bit the apple cause I loved you, and why would you lie? And then I realized you're just as naive as I am. Oh, you're so traumatized, it makes me wanna cry. You dumb bitch, I loved you, I loved you, I loved you, it's true. I wanted to be you and do what you do.
This woman literally chopped her baby's arms off with a kitchen knife, all because God told her to. Dina and John Schlosser lived in Plano, Texas with their 3 daughters, ages 9, 6, and 10 months old. On November 22nd, 2004, John got a call from Dina saying she'd just cut off their baby's arms. He thought she was joking, even though Dina had a history of mental illness. Regardless, when you hear a claim like that, it should be taken seriously. Instead of calling the police, John called the pastor of his church. The pastor told John to call someone who can check on Dina and their baby Margaret to make sure everything is okay. He then called his neighbor Carolyn, who worked at a daycare center in the area, and asked for them to check on Dina and Margaret. Carolyn called Margaret on the phone, and that's when things started to get real. It's unclear what the phone call entailed, but whatever it was, it led a fellow daycare employee to call the police. 911 dispatcher Steve Edwards afterwards, then called Dina to see if everything was okay. Dina picked up the phone and calmly told Steve she just cut off her baby's arms. Steve asked Dina if she wanted to help her baby, and she smugly said no. As if this woman didn't already seem crazy enough, Steve said he heard church hymns playing in the background. Like, what is this woman's deal? With that, police officers and paramedics rushed to the scene. Officer David Tilley was the first to arrive. He found Dina covered in red fluid with a gash on her shoulder and a 9-inch kitchen blade in her hand. One report said she was sitting at her computer table, casually reading her Bible with the gospel song "He Touched Me" playing in the background. Oh my god, this is like straight out of a horror movie. David was able to convince Dina to hand him the blade, and when she did, he noticed pieces of flesh on it. Ugh, I bet his stomach was in knots. More officers showed up, and they found the almost 11-month-old baby Margaret in her crib in the back bedroom. Sadly, the claims were true. Margaret's arms had indeed been cut off, and she was losing fluid quickly. Margaret was rushed to the hospital while officers interviewed Dina. Dina showed absolutely no emotion during her interview. She admitted to cutting off her baby's arms with a dazed look in her eyes. Apparently, Dina saw this story on the news about a lion attacking a young boy and took it as a sign of the apocalypse. God then commanded her to cut off the arms of her baby, and she obeyed. Dina also said God told her to cut her arms off after that, which is why she had the wound on her shoulder. During her interview, Dina was praying. She said, "Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord." She was also humming church hymns. It's so messed up. As for Margaret, it was too late to save her. Not only were both of her arms completely severed at the shoulder, but Margaret also had over 50 wounds on her face.
These serial killers got caught because of stupid mistakes they made. And I cover all sorts of true crime and spooky stuff here, so make sure you follow along. Dennis Rader was a prolific serial killer in Kansas from 1974 to 1991. He was called BTK, which stood for Bind, Torture, Kill, because that's what he liked to do. But he also liked to taunt the police. He would send the police letters signed BTK, which could not be traced back to his real identity. So in the early 2000s, he had been dormant for over 10 years, but he still liked to taunt the police. And the early 2000s also brought new technology for communicating. So BTK, being the mad genius he was, wrote a letter to police asking if he sent them a floppy disk, would they be able to trace it back to him? And the police answered this letter basically saying, no, we totally can't do that. So BTK sends the police a floppy disk, and there's metadata on this floppy disk that says the last edit was done by someone named Dennis at Christ Lutheran Church. And then a 10-second Google search showed police that Dennis Rader was the president of the council at Christ Lutheran Church. Afterwards, the police basically came out and said that if Dennis had just kept his mouth shut and kept murdering, they probably would have never caught him. Let me know if you want more of these, because there's some other idiots out there.
I've wanted to kill my mother since I was 8 years old, and I'm not proud of that. A month later, I'm up living with my grandparents in the mountains, and 10 months later, I murdered them. It made it worse to be on top of a mountain. I was literally on top of a mountain when it happened. And I sensed everybody in the world just stopping what they were doing, turning around, saw what I did, and are coming to get me. And I knew I was paranoid at that moment. I knew anybody that came up there and gave me a funny look or a fishy eye or quizzical look, I'd have blown their brains out thinking they were coming to get me. And if it had been in a city, I would have been a mass murderer at age 15. I would have killed until they gunned me down. I wouldn't have been able to reason my way out of it. I was scared to death, and I was violent. I felt my back hit that wall. I was the rabbit that always ran, that always backed away, always burned his bridges. And suddenly there weren't any more, and my back hit that wall, and I came out screaming and kicking and shooting.
Now, a lot of people have been tagging me in this video, so I'm here to explain the backstory to this whole thing. This is the case of Lauren McCluskey. Now, the girl you see in this video was a 21-year-old college student in Utah. On October 22nd, 2018 at 9:55 p.m., she was found dead in her dormitory. She was shot 7 times. That afternoon, her ex-boyfriend waited for her outside her dormitory for several hours. She was on the phone with her mother at 8:23 p.m. when Melvin Rowland, her ex-boyfriend, confronted her. He violently dragged her across the parking lot in front of her dormitory, dropping all of her belongings. At 8:23 p.m., Lauren's father alerted campus authorities that his daughter was in danger. But around that time, it was already too late. Rowland committed slip and slide hours before killing McCluskey. The man who loaned Rowland the gun was sentenced to 3 years in prison. However, this didn't rest there. 2 years after Lauren's death, details started surfacing that campus ignored McCluskey in her claims of her ex-boyfriend stalking her and her life being in danger. It said that Lauren alerted campus authorities about her stalker ex-boyfriend, but they completely ignored her. The family ended up suing the university, and in exchange, the university paid them $14 million, but the damage was already done. That still didn't help the fact that the university ignored one of their brightest students who had scholarships to choose from. Like and follow for more.
When I covered the most disturbing website you could run across on the modern day internet, not many people know that the creator of that website actually created another one because he deemed that website not shocking enough. Always, this is for educational purposes only. Please do not seek out these kinds of websites. They can destroy your computer, if not your mental sanity. The website we're going to be talking about is actually taken down, but please do not Google it in any way because there are remnants of it still located throughout the internet. The website's name was womansalliance.xyz. And Women's Alliance was a classic bait and switch website. If you don't know what a bait and switch website is, it is something that is pretending to be something that it's not. In the case of Women's Alliance, it was taken on the guise of a feminist women's empowerment website. And similar to the website before, here is a snapshot of what you would see if you were to visit the landing page of womensalliance.xyz. It's kind of blurry, you can't read it, but basically it's saying this website contains stories of women empowerment and it may be offensive to some readers. Viewer discretion is advised, 18 plus only, and then you would click that enter button to enter the actual site. And once you hit the enter button is the reason I warn people not to go onto these websites, because then scripts would take over your computer, forcing your volume to go as loud as it could go, and then force it into full screen mode. Also similar to the website I talked about before, as soon as you hit the enter button, it is then impossible to leave that website unless you unplug your computer. Alt F4 does not work, Task Manager does not work, the scripts have taken over your computer completely. I am now going to describe what you see and hear on this website, so if you are sensitive to this subject, please continue scrolling. I'm going to give you a second. Okay, here we go. From this point on, your browser is then in full screen mode and playing a non-stop montage of videos to include women being tortured to the highest degree, mutilated, raped, and also various diseases affecting women. Videos about the diseased women would include videos like pus-filled breasts due to cancer, rotting breasts, and even maggots crawling out of a woman's private parts that is now deemed to be a corpse. While this is going on, Ray Orbison's song Pretty Woman is being blared at very high volumes over the sounds of the woman being tortured. The reason this website is way more malicious and sinister than the previous website is because this is an actual bait and switch. The people who were visiting these websites were actually going to this website for stories of women empowerment and to read about women's power. But what they were getting instead was the complete opposite and no way of ever exiting the website without completely turning off your computer. Now, I did describe this website as well as the previous website in way more detail on my YouTube channel, but I also did read some words from the actual creator of the website into why he created these sites, how he did it, and what was his motivation behind them. Again, if you want to know why he created these websites and you want to know more about these websites, my latest video on my YouTube channel is up now and it is free to watch.
was not dead. Miraculously, she survived just unimaginable. Her name is Charla Nash. Charla almost always covers her face with a hat and scarf. She wears it, she says, because she doesn't want to scare people.
Do this and put it on your chin. Is this your chin, Mama? Do this and put it on your chin.
They were murdered in their own home by a man they trusted. Mother and daughter strangled, suffocated and set on fire by the family handyman Shabazz Khan. Dr. Saman Mir Sachavi and her 14-year-old daughter Vian Mangrio lived in Reedley in Lancashire. CCTV captures Khan walking towards their home the day he killed them. When Vian comes home from school, her mum is already dead. And when Khan leaves at around 10 p.m, so is she. It's believed they had both been drugged and then murdered. Khan then tried to cover his tracks by starting a fire in the kitchen and scrawling graffiti on the walls. It reads, "This is a COVID house. My mum is evil."